Good morning. This is your professor, Boreas Sachs. I look like this, sometimes at least, and I am speaking from my home in White Plains, New York, on a very, very cold January day. Welcome to the course, Transformations of the Epic. You may possibly know me already through some of my books, such as The Mythical Zoo or Imaginary Animals. I have never had a very good feeling for protocols, so I will leave the first one up to you. You are welcome to call me Borea, Professor Sachs, Professor, or whatever within reason you think appropriate. I think those who look to take advanced degrees in literature are always sort of special, since that is something people do out of love. Many people today do not understand that literature is important, but we all know that it is. I look forward to working with you over the course of the semester. An epic is a long narrative, usually in verse, in which the hero embodies the values of a certain people. It is noteworthy for the grandeur of its scope and often ranges not only among many nations, but also between realms such as those of heaven and earth. Epics often serve to define and unify a culture. The tradition of the epic begins with Gilgamesh in ancient Mesopotamia and then continues through the Iliad and many tales of chivalry to evolve into the novel in historically recent times. The epic has many other features, but those are academic matters that can wait for later. On the one hand, I do not think anything else in literature appeals to people as naively and spontaneously as the old epics. As a boy, I especially loved the tales of Norse gods and heroes from the Eddas of Snorri Sturluson, as well as many stories of medieval knights and kings. These are still favorite subjects of video games today, and one need not be especially educated in order to appreciate them. But what complicates things for us is that they embody values that, for the most part, we are today trying to get away from. Many epics glorify war, and most are filled with violence. Put simply, for all the emphasis that some epics may place on gentle manners, they are much too macho, too brutal for contemporary mores. One of the best examples is the medieval French Song of Roland from about the mid-11th century. As you possibly already know, Roland is a knight commanding the rear guard of the Emperor Charlemagne. He carries a famous horn that nobody else can blow. He and his men realize they are moving into an ambush, and his friends beg him many times to alert the emperor by blowing on his horn. Roland resolutely refuses, saying that calling for help would seem cowardly. There is an extended description of the battle in which, one by one, all of Roland's companions are slain, taking countless Saracens with them, of course. At last, when all hope of survival is gone, the grand climax comes when Roland blows his horn, so that the Emperor Charlemagne will know what has happened and come to avenge him. With his last strength, Roland carefully arranges his body so that it faces the enemy, in order that Charlemagne should know that he did not die in retreat. This is pretty strong stuff for early adolescence. At that stage of my life, I read the passage where Roland blows his horn over and over and broke out in tears every time. Even then, I knew in the back of my mind that Roland had been behaving rather strangely, but it did not seem to matter. I could think of nothing more romantic than to throw your life away in a dramatic gesture. And maybe I am just lucky that the right opportunity never came around. When I reread the passage a decade or so later, I still found it very moving, though with stronger reservations. When I reread it recently, I thought, this guy is completely nuts. Roland deliberately arranges not only for his own death, but also that of his friends and companions. And for what? His own ego? The pursuit of glory? And then there is the gratuitous brutality. Not only is Gan, the traitor who set up the massacre, torn apart by horses, but 30 of his relatives, who had no part in it, are also killed. I am almost ashamed to admit that, in some ways, I still find the poem quite moving. This is a problem that we encounter over and over in reading the epics of the past. It is hard to align many of our responses with contemporary values. Epics tend to appeal to us in a very primal way, which is almost as hard to embrace as it is to disown. Well, all of that is just a little something to start you thinking. If you are new to online courses, this one might take a little bit of getting used to. Online learning tends to be very collaborative, and students learn from one another as well as from the instructor. A good online student needs to be proactive, so do not hesitate to comment or ask questions if you are so inclined. Look the course over, read the syllabus, and then post an introduction in the first discussion forum. Thank you for signing up, and I look forward to sharing our adventure. And, by the way, we will not be moving into any massacre.